Conduct in the City Council chambers. Rules of decorum for the public. Members of the audience shall not engage in disorderly or boisterous conduct, including the utterance of loud, threatening, or abusive language, clapping, whistling, stamping of feet, or other acts which disturb, disrupt, impede, or otherwise render the orderly conduct of the city meeting infeasible. A member of the audience engaging in any such conduct shall, at the discretion of the presiding officer or a majority of the city council, be subject to ejection from the meeting per Government Code Section 54954.3C. Removal from the council chambers. Any person who commits the following acts in respect to a meeting of the city shall be removed from the council chambers per Government Code Section 54954.3C. A, disorderly, contemptuous, or insolent behavior towards the city council or any member thereof, tending to interrupt the due and orderly course of said meeting. A breach of peace, boisterous conduct, or violent disturbance, tending to interrupt the due and orderly course of said meeting. Disobedience of any lawful order from the mayor, which shall include an order to be seated or to refrain from addressing the city council, and any other unlawful interference with the due and orderly course of said meeting. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Taft City Council Successor Agency Joint Regularly Scheduled Meeting for Tuesday, October the 18th, 2022. The City of Taft Council meetings are being held in person with full capacity seating are live streamed at www.youtube.com/user/City of Taft. Public comment may be made in person and also can be received per the following. Written comments may be dropped off in the drop box in front of City Hall. Comments may be emailed to the city clerk at cityclerk@cityoftaft.org. Made by phone to the city clerk's office at 661-763-1222. Public comments will be accepted up until 5 p.m. the day of the meeting, and any comment received will be read into the record. We're going to begin this evening's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilman Josh Bryant, as well as an invocation by Greg Mudge. So if you would be so kind as to join us.
Everyone please join me, place their hand over their heart and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you join me in prayer, please? Father in heaven, we're so thankful that we have these willing members here that govern over us here in this town. We're thankful that you've entrusted them with this position, and we ask that you'd grant them your wisdom and your compassion and your love. We ask, Father, that they would consider in the love that you have for each of the members of our community as they make the difficult decisions that they have to make. We thank you for your Lord, our Savior, Jesus Christ, and we just ask that your Spirit would dwell in our hearts. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Greg, thank you very much, sir. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Knorr.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cryer.
Here.
Councilmember Bryant.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
And Councilmember Eveland is absent with notice.
All right. Very good. Thank you. First item on this evening's agenda is citizen request public comments. We don't have any? Nobody phoned in or emailed either? Well, then I don't have to read this entire paragraph. All right, we'll move forward. Council statements, non-action. Councilman Bryan, I'll begin with you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief, I promise. Everyone should be checking their mail, so I believe we're still doing everybody gets to vote by mail in the state of California, so please keep an eye out for your ballots. There's obviously a number of people and propositions for your consideration, and I just implore you to do everything you can to read about them, vote your conscience, vote your mind, and make sure you get those ballots turned back in. I know that we have at least one, if not two, drop-off locations here in the city. I believe the post office is collecting, and there may be a collection at the polling place, the rec. There are a number of detailed instructions which tell you exactly where those places are within the ballot. And I believe there are multiple groups that are collecting and then ultimately taking them back to the county or to the other polling sites. So again, make sure you do your civic duty and get those things turned in. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
That's a lot. This is everybody's government, and participate, please. It is a hard-fought right to vote and be a part of your government. Do not take it for granted. All right, then, Councilman Whiting, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything tonight.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next council meeting is Election Day. So, is it not Election Day?
No.
Oh, I was mistaken. But we're getting close to Election Day. And it's a right that was given to us to vote and to choose. That's where we get the word democracy. Our government is a constitutional republic, but this is a chance to vote our hearts and our minds. If you like what's going on in California, then keep it the same. If you're unhappy with what's happening in California, then vote for the people that's going to do it right and lower our taxes and our fuel and all that. But there's been a lot of issues brewing, and it's not going in the right direction. But this is our opportunity to vote, and right or wrong or indifferent, it's your choice you make how we want our country to go. And we have some good people here that's running, and consider them. The other thing, too, is getting close to the holidays. Enjoy them. There's a lot of things happening here in Taft. I've had a grand opening this past week, and things are going, and a lot of activities going. And take advantage of them, keep our dollars here, but I understand when there's nothing here, if you don't have anything that you can partake in, you can go. You have my permission to go outside of Taft and shop, but try to shop in Taft first. But it's a great city, and but be careful. There's the holidays coming, and the weather's changing, and that's all I have to say, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. There is a holiday coming. First one. Everybody know what it is? It's Halloween. You know why you know it's Halloween? Because if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, it's plumb full of Christmas decorations. That's why. You can't get in there to buy a lawnmower without tripping over blow-up snowmen and Santa Clauses and stuff. But anyway, I do believe Halloween, then Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday, by the way.
Veterans Day.
Veterans Day, absolutely a critical one for all of us. So thank you very much for that. A lot going on. Halloween's coming up. A lot of little kids going to be out there. It's always a lot of fun. We are going to hear from an expert regarding a very unfortunate reality about one of the things that we're going to have to watch for this holiday season as far as trick or treat. And I'll let our guests discuss that. So that's all I have this evening. Moving forward, we have department reports. All right, Chief McMinn, you're up.
Thank you. Mayor, Councilman, City Attorney, City Manager, Madam Clerk. I'm going to bring up one of my favorite people. This is Dr. Jasmeet Baines. She is actually running for the 5th District, 35th Assembly seat, and she has got a presentation for us on the fentanyl. And basically, this thing is moving through our country, as we all know. And this time of year is something where parents need to be eyeful and mindful of the trick-or-treat candy that go in the bags, and when you find the loose ones, and how to navigate through this safely. Also, we're having an epidemic through our county with as many fentanyl overdoses that the Kern County is having. We are lucky here. We have had a few, but on a lower scale. But we are just lucky because we're more mindful, I believe. So I would like to, without ado, I'd like to bring up Dr. Jasmeet Baines.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, Can I first start off by saying it's so good to be home?
Nice to have you here, Jasmine.
It's unfortunate what we'll be talking about on fentanyl. I feel like it was just yesterday I was standing before you guys talking about COVID, and now we're back here talking about another epidemic that's rising, and that's fentanyl. Something I've worked against for a very long time, especially when I was back here in Taft working at the clinic. It's something that we try to create some awareness about, and now it's kind of, skyrocketed into this epidemic, unfortunately. So we'll go ahead and get into the presentation. We'll go to the next slide. So basically, just wanted to go over what fentanyl is. Fentanyl is an opioid. Opioids work by binding the opioid receptors, which are found in the areas of brain, which gives pleasure. So, that pleasure is created by a release of the hormone dopamine. So basically, and I lecture the students, so I tell the students, anytime you have a test and you see an A, you get a sense of pleasure, right? Because you excelled in that test. Well, that's your dopamine release. Imagine an opioid that goes in and gives you that same feeling, but you didn't have to study hard for a test. And that's what opioids do. Actually, that feeling of elation happens from a lot of drugs, not just opioids. And there's different types of opioids. There's buprenorphine, which is Suboxone, which is the MADX program, which is used for people in recovery from addiction to opioids. It's an opioid that serves a purpose of a really good pain medication, but it doesn't give you that feeling of elation and happiness. It kind of cuts down on that. So it basically targets the reason why you're taking opioids, for pain. And there's different types of opioids. There's fentanyl, there's heroin, there's methadone. Methadone is what they used to use for opioid abuse. It's still being used. There are patients still on it, but the new method is buprenorphine, which is Suboxone. And then there's naltrexone, opium, and oxycodone. So these are different types of opioids. Next slide, please. So fentanyl is something that has been used in hospitals. We've been using it for a very long time. It's a very effective pain medication. It's fast on, fast off. It's one of our go-to medications that we use in emergency rooms for any traumatic person or situation that comes in, gunshot wounds, severed limbs. Fentanyl works to control the pain right away. It's fast on and it's fast off. The unfortunate part about fentanyl, it's one of the most addictive drugs out there right now. It's also 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine, and overdoses are on the rise. We'll go to the next slide. Next one. I have this for high school student kids. So what is fentanyl? It's 50 times stronger than heroin, 100 times stronger than morphine. There are two types. There's a pharmaceutical type and there's the illicitly manufactured fentanyl. The pharmaceutical type is the one that we're using in hospitals. Doctors used to prescribe fentanyl, but in the last, I would say, 3-4 years, you will not see a prescription of fentanyl being given unless the person's on end of life or hospice at this point. And that's pretty close monitoring of that. The pharmaceutical fentanyl production has decreased in the last 5 to 10 years. Right now, what's on the rise is the illicitly manufactured fentanyl. It's easier to make, it's faster to make than heroin, and that's why it's on the rise. Sources, of course, as we all know in this room, is coming through our borders. It's coming through our ports because our ports are so backed up that no one's looking at what's in the ports because the reality of our supply chain issues, which is something that needs to be dealt with. Unfortunately, human trafficking and drugs are on the rise because we cannot manage our ports appropriately. And fentanyl remains the deadliest drug threat facing this country currently. And then we'll talk about something else that's on the rise as well. Next slide, please.
Carpet.
So what we're doing right now is going to high school students because right now the biggest rise in opioid overdoses are ages from 10 to 19, actually. It's almost about I'll get into that, about 400% increase in the last 2 years, and then some up to 625% increase. So this is where we got to get into our high schools. We got to talk to kids about drugs. Parents need to talk to their kids about drugs. And the CDC has started a new protocol called the One Pill Can Kill. And that's basically what it is. That's what we're dealing with. Look, the reality is peer pressure exists. Whether we like it or not, it exists. We have all been in that room where we probably did something that we should not have done. The difference is when we did it in our generation, you lived to tell another and live another day. The problem is with fentanyl, you will not live. So where we were able to recuperate from those mistakes and grow up to be a better person, our kids cannot. Our kids will die in that one mistake that they make. And getting that information out there is really important. The other picture down there is the rainbow fentanyl. It kind of looks like sidewalk chalk. It comes in that, and I'll go into other forms that it comes in. There's a liquid form, there's a powder form. The liquid form is actually in the form of eye drops, actually, that are being used, and they're currently being used in all high schools in America. So it's really important to empower our kids about what fentanyl is, and also at the same time, make them realize that the mistakes we could have made, you guys do not have the liberty of making those mistakes. Next slide. So these are the other forms. So there's the rainbow fentanyl, which is a picture that's been making its waves on social media. It is very true. There was another seizure of rainbow fentanyl actually yesterday in Sacramento, almost I think 5,000 pills. Wow. There was one in New York last week, which was like 15,000 pills in a Lego box on the subway, I believe. If you look at the penny, that is the amount of fentanyl it'll take to kill you. And then the other forms that they use is the eye drops that have been on the rise lately because it's easier to conceal. Next slide. So these are some recent stats. Over 150 people die every day from overdoses related to synthetic opioids like fentanyl. Overdose deaths involving synthetic opioids in 2020 were over 18 times the number in 2013. 154 people die every day from overdoses, and this number is increasing every single moment. Every single day, this number is increasing. And then what I had said before, the opioid-related overdose deaths among people 10 to 19 have increased by more than 400%. Estimations are this is the leading cause of death in ages to 10 to 19 in the next year. Next slide. So there's a lot of fear around fentanyl. What are we going to do if you become exposed to it? If you touch it, will you go into overdose? The biggest thing that happens is when the powder becomes airborne and you smell it, or if you touched it and then you touch your eyes or your nose, you inoculate yourself. Just by touching fentanyl, you can't transdermally absorb it, but that's not how people are going to overdose. They're actually touching it and then they touch their eyes or their nose. We got to make sure first responders understand to wash, because they're the ones that are going to be encountering this. Wash your hands with water and soap. Hand sanitizer does not work. It actually wasn't even effective against COVID-19.
Get out of town. At $12 a little bitty bottle, how about that?
Nope, you need almost 80% alcohol in that hand sanitizer for it to be effective against COVID-19. Most sanitizers that are being marketed was not that. So, no, regular water and soap is what is needed to clear yourself and of any strand of fentanyl that you might have. So it's really important that we prepare our first responders to make sure that they understand how to deal with that. And Chief has been, we've talked about it. They have a great first responder response that's already hit the main wavelength here. Next slide. Signs of opioid overdose. Many people get confused. What does a person look like when they're in overdose? They're not responding. That's the biggest thing. They're passed out. It's hard to arouse. They're not breathing. Their pulse is dissipating. So it's really hard. They're choking. They're gurgling. They're basically dying right in front of you. And this is important because kids have no idea what the signs of overdose are for opioids. When I go and I give this lecture in high schools, I ask them, I say, is the person hot or cold? And they all say hot for some reason. Like, no, guys.
It's 50-50 shot.
It's just, they have no idea. They are so unprepared for what's hitting them. And this is why it's important to get that information out. And then, if you come upon someone that's passed out, make sure you call 911 first, and then we'll go into the life-saving medication, NARCAN, and, try to keep the person awake, and then we'll go to the next slide. We'll go to the next slide. So this is NARCAN. This is something that I've been talking about for quite a bit of time. We had our first NARCAN drive here about 2-3 years ago. And at that time, we didn't think it would become that big of a problem as it is today, I'll be honest. We knew it was a problem. We knew it was hitting us, but the state that we're in today is so astronomically high that nobody could have anticipated this. I just wish we could have put much, much bigger eyes on this right now, and I'll go into something else that's on the rise. So NARCAN is a spray, goes in the nose, and it saves a life within seconds. The problem that's happening right now, the other issue that's happening is there might be a nationwide shortage of NARCAN. We're running into a lot. And so us at the rehab, before we would give everybody 2 boxes, we're cutting down to 1 in anticipation the next 2 or 3 weeks we might run out of NARCAN. They're increasing production as we talk. The problem is so out of hand right now that there is a fear that we might run out of NARCAN. And this is the only thing that you can use to save a life. That's an overdose from fentanyl. It goes in the nose and it can save a life in 3 seconds. The biggest thing I always stress is when you find a person pass out, the picture can be clear if it's an opioid overdose. You'll see the pills or you'll see something, call 911, give them NARCAN. The problem, the concern that I have is I want people to understand that you have to also call 911. That person needs help. They need wraparound services. You need to give them access to that. But not just that, what if it's not an opioid overdose? There's other things that can look like that, like a hypoglycemic episode. They're passed out because their sugar got low. They're passed out because they fainted. There's other things. So this is why I stress always call 911 first, because if it's not an opioid overdose, what do you do? The other thing that's been happening is people being afraid because they did drugs together and, oh, am I going to get in trouble? You will not get in trouble. You will actually help save a life. And that's most important. We need to make sure people understand that. And then the other thing is just making sure that people, unfortunately, just, there was a police officer that told me, it was like a couple of weeks ago, that he went into a house and he saw like 10 NARCANs on the ground. That tells me that there is a person that is addicted to drugs and is not getting the wraparound services. There's a lot of NARCAN at his disposal, but where are the wraparound services to help him beat that addiction? That's where we got to empower our addiction response, our addiction rehabilitation services, like Bakersfield Recovery Services. The thing about fentanyl that I would like for you guys to understand is most people are taking it and they don't even know what's in it. It's being laced in so many things right now. And I'll give you an example. At our rehab, 90% of people that come in are test positive for fentanyl, and 80% of them will tell me they've never taken fentanyl in their life. It's being laced in marijuana, it's being laced in heroin, it's being laced in methamphetamines. Right now, it's really hard to find a drug without fentanyl in it. It's in everything. Why? Why would they be lacing fentanyl? It's going to kill the people that they're giving drugs to. Well, if you look at the potential of fentanyl being one of the most addicted things out there, it's a business transaction for them. It's, that batch that you made, put a little fentanyl, get it, it's even more addictive. Those people will keep coming back to that same drug dealer because it's an addictive batch. So that was what was first happening. The problem is drug dealers are not very smart, and they might put a little too much fentanyl and end up killing that person. Next slide, please. That's just my nerdiness. We'll go on. Basically, This is the opioid receptor, how Narcan works. Narcan goes in and it kicks off the opioid and it sits there and it doesn't transmit any of the receptors mechanisms to the cell that I'm an opioid. It cuts it all off. Next slide. So this is just some of the protocols that we've created at Bakersfield Recovery Services on giving out Narcan. Next slide, please. We'll go next. Actually, one back, sorry. So Narcan side effects. The other big question I always get asked is, can this harm people? What's going to happen? What are the side effects of Narcan? Restlessness, anger, that happens because they actually go into withdrawals from opioids when you give them the Narcan. They can go, and that's why I always tell, make sure you call 911 first, because the patient or the person can get really combative and it can get really scary very fast after Narcan. They will wake up, they will be mad at you, that you broke their high or whatever, and they will be mad because now they're in withdrawal. The other thing, can someone die from Narcan? No, but you can save a life. That's the biggest thing. The other thing is, what if it's not an opioid overdose and you delay care of other methods? So those are the two things that I worry most about. But if you have Narcan, use it. It can save a life. I had a patient that I had given a Flonase prescription for, and he accidentally got Narcan. I don't know what happened. There was a mix-up at the pharmacy. He's like, your Flonase didn't work. There was only one dose in it, and now I have diarrhea, and my allergies are much worse. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it was a telehealth. He showed me, like, who gave you Narcan? The other problem that's been happening is it's one spray in that thing, and you don't need to prime it. And there's actually people that they'll see it, they'll pull it out, and then they'll prime it. And there goes that dose. So you don't need to prime it, just take it and shove it in that nose. Next slide. Carfentanil. So this is something that's very serious and is on the rise and is very, very, very concerning. There has been reports in Kern County of carfentanil being here. Actually, I think the first was 5-6 years ago when they first. It's been a while, but it's making its rise. So carfentanil is actually something that's used as a tranquilizer to tranquilize like elephants and hippos. It's 100 times more potent than fentanyl. And if you look at that picture down there, that's how much fentanyl it takes to kill you, and that's how much carfentanil it takes to kill you. 2 milligrams of fentanyl or 0.02 milligrams of carfentanil. And it's 10,000 times more potent than morphine. It's on the rise, it's coming, and this is something that we need to make sure our towns, first of all, build the awareness. We don't need to panic, I'm not coming here to make everyone panic. This is where we just get to the table and do what we can. And the biggest thing we need to do is create awareness, create policies, create protocols on what fentanyl is, what Narcan is, and we build our defense system and move forward. And we, equip our law enforcement with all the tools necessary to take these bad guys out that are dealing this. This is serious. I mean, this is the reason why I decided to run for assembly. When I saw all of this happening, we got to get some sense in Sacramento. We got to bring some sense back and give back our tools of accountability back to our law enforcement so we can get rid of things like carfentanil. I think the way that we've kind of created some legislation here in the past 5 to 6 years, these are all the reasons why these things are on the rise. So we've got multiple efforts to work on that, but the biggest message I have for cities is make sure you guys get aware of what Narcan is, get equipped, and get equipped soon. Hopefully we don't run out of Narcan and they can build that supply again, but there's national shortage on a lot of things right now. So, didn't mean to scare you guys. We're gonna make it through, but this is something that I just wanted to bring of awareness to you guys. So, that's it.
All right, thank you very much for coming and visiting with us. One of the scary aspects is you went back to that rainbow fentanyl. That looks like sweet tarts, or it looks like candy. And if you see those things, you got to get rid of them. So if you see that, say your kid goes trick-or-treating, he comes back, and in the bottom of the bag, You know, they're not in the small paper bags that you see, sweet tarts and all the usual stuff. What do you do with them? What do you do?
Yeah, so that is of concern for Halloween that's coming up. Make sure you look through all of your candies. Make sure you put gloves on when you're looking through those candies. But I mean, we don't need to panic. I mean, we don't need to cancel Halloween. We just need to be vigilant. And we need to make sure that we check everything. We've been doing that, right? We've been doing that for a very long time. We check all the candies, make sure they come from sources like the trunk or treat that we do, you know, stuff like that. So we need to prioritize safe trick or treating and give people alternatives. And I think that would be the answer.
All right. There's no second chance with this stuff. That's what you're trying to let us know. There's no second chance. Just very little bit of it is your last chance.
It's unfortunate what we're dealing with today, where we were able to recuperate from mistakes our youth cannot. It's unfortunate.
All right. Thank you very much. We know where most of it's coming from. And actually, a lot of it used to, a great deal of fentanyl was manufactured in China. Now, actually, south of the border, they're getting some ingredients and they're making it themselves. Like you said, the profit margin for the bad guys south of the border to actually mix and make this stuff is far greater than heroin or methamphetamines. And here again, that is why. How do you cut those things, all those illicit drugs? And unfortunately, through the course of the last several years, we have grown complacent and we're allowing these things, we're allowing these pollutants and these killers and these horrible chemicals to come into our community. And the people who are handing them out, I mean, they're getting ROR'd, for heaven's sake. Some of them released on their own recognizance. Hey, we caught you with 1,500 pills of fentanyl. Here's a ticket. Be sure and come back and appear in 2 months.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes. It's very unfortunate. And,
it is.
And everything that I went through in this slide, it's real. I know there's some things being said, oh, there's a myth. No, rainbow fentanyl is real. That picture is real, and people need to wake up and realize what's on the horizon.
All right. Thank you very much. You wouldn't mix that stuff up the way they did if you didn't want young people to be drawn to it, for heaven's sakes. They're doing that on purpose.
And I just want to touch on something that Mayor Norris said, and it's correct. It's coming through South America, and the reason it's cheaper to produce. It gives a 20, 25, 30 times a Ford Kai. So why not? And it's more addictive, and that's the draw to it. So they're taking the risk with us, or citizens, that you lose a few, but you gain so many. So that's where the negative factor comes into effect, of course. Of course, we're not trying to scare the trick-or-treating. Just parents understand, kids just love to reach into their bag while they're walking around and dig in. Take a look in the bag. Anything unwrapped, get rid of it.
Yeah.
Anything wrapped, then you know, and it's the correct wrapper, then you know you can deal with it safely. So I just wanted everybody to be aware. We don't seem to have that problem here, but it doesn't hurt to be on the radar and keep an eye out.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chief, and thanks, Jasmeet Baines. Yes?
I do have a couple of questions. I'm sure somebody else might have some questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Too.
By all means.
This is educational. I appreciate you, Dr. Baines, being here. I have several questions and stuff. What's the chance of them using that fentanyl in our water reservoirs or rivers or supplies and stuff? Could it be effective to kill people, or just gives me a big high, or nothing will happen at all?
The concern is real. The concern is real.
It can happen.
It could.
And they can also use it in supermarkets by putting like dust or sprinkling like a little powder on the food and everything. If somebody's devious enough.
I'm not going to minimize the risk. I would be hesitant on, creating mass hysteria by that right now, but I don't want to minimize that.
Okay. And what's the cost to the city? Is there no cost, or is there a cost to have NARCAN?
We have been lucky. Dr. Baines has been gracious enough to equip our department with NARCAN, and we put our individuals through the short presentation, which allows them to administer it and when to administer it. So we've been lucky. We've actually used it several times. So far it's been quite ineffective or cost effective for us because we haven't been charged for it or had to buy it. But like she's talking about the shortages that are upcoming, this could affect us, of course. But right now we are in stock of the NARCAN.
The NARCAN then is highly effective as far as reviving a person that's overdosed on that, or there's like a 80% chance of
No, it's highly effective, and I'll leave you with this thought is they're actually increasing the dose of NAR. So right now it's a 4 milligram dose, but because of how much fentanyl there's out, they're about to increase it to an 8 milligram dose. That's how severe this situation is that we're in.
Yeah, I know you said there's 400% increase in the last 2 years. It shouldn't be. It should be 400% less than that. The question would be, what's the comparison with how many students versus the homeless as far as their percentage there, as far as overdosing on fentanyl?
I don't know that.
I don't have that information offhand, but I do know that we've been lucky so far. I hate to use the word lucky, but we have also had deaths with some homeless. And the only time that NARCAN is not effective is when you've been unconscious for quite some period of time. I believe the one we had was approximately like 30 minutes before he was found. And, you know, even trying to administer NARCAN, of course, we were past that point. So.
And another question is, can a civilian purchase one to have, like I said, you have a lot of employees and stuff, you want to, like in my case, and carry it with me, or is that possible?
Yeah, so Get Naloxone Now is a website that you can go on and go through the little training on there. The biggest thing I want is I don't want to hand NARCAN out like candy. I want to make sure people get the training to recognize the signs and make sure that they can help save a life. The last thing I want is to just throw it out in people's hands and they don't know what they're doing with it, because it is a medication. And it currently right now still requires a medical license to have, but you are covered by the Good Samaritan law if you have it. And you can get it.
No, say you see somebody passed out, you think they're on fentanyl, and they weren't. Does that affect them if it was a false alarm, or if you gave them the NARCAN with the?
No, but it'll delay the care for whatever it is that caused them to be. But that's why I'm always, I always stress call 911 first, and then give the NARCAN. Of course, if it's clear and you walk on and you see that there's fentanyl powder laced all over the place, of course, give the NARCAN first. But I always stress call 911 first, because if you're alone and the person comes to and they're combative, at least you're protected.
I'd like to say again that it's good that you were here to educate here on our TV. Streaming live right now and also during the week, and hopefully get somebody to recognize that their children or anything else that could related to help save their life or be educated. So very appreciative for you being here and answering the questions. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Any additional questions?
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
No questions?
All right.
Well, Jasmine, Dr. Baines, thank you so much for coming and sharing that information with us. Chief, thank you for getting a hold of Dr. Baines.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And, best of luck in your upcoming race.
We're going strong.
All right, thank you again.
Thank you.
Tell your daddy I said hi, by the way. All right, any other department reports? Seeing none. City manager reports. City Manager Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank Jasmine for coming up before she leaves. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. City attorney statements. Jason?
Thank you. No statement, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thanks, sir. Future agenda requests at this time, gentlemen?
None here.
Hearing none, all right, we'll move forward to the consent calendar, items 7 through 10. Item number 7 is the meeting, or the minutes from the October 4th regular meeting. Item number 8 is the payment of bills, some $216,000 worth of bills. Item number 9 is the treasurer's report. Recommendation is a motion to receive and file the treasurer's report for the month of June 2022. Item 10 is a termination of a lease agreement with Taft Public Finance Authority and acceptance of property transfer. Recommendation here is a motion to adopt a resolution entitled "A Resolution of the Taft City Council Terminating Lease Agreement dated January 1st, 1997 between the Taft Public Financing Authority and the City of Taft and accepting conveyance of property along with all right, title, and interest in the leased property." Does anybody in public wish to comment on any of these items? Seeing none. Does any council member wish to remove any of these items from the consent calendar?
None here.
None? All right. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve consent calendar items 7 through 10.
So, second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Cryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Bryant.
Yes.
Councilmember Whiting.
Yes.
And Mayor Noor.
Yes, not approved on a 4-0 vote. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll be recessing the regularly scheduled meeting of the Taft City Council so that we can conduct a meeting of the Taft Public Financing Authority. So we'll go into recess. I'll hand the gavel over to the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I open up the Taft Public Finance Authority special meeting for October 18th, 2022. And may we have a roll call?
Chairman Cryer,
Here.
Director Bryant,
Here.
Director Whiting,
Here.
and Director Noor.
Here.
Thank you. Number one, citizen request for public comments. This is the time and place for the general public to address the authority on matters within their control. State law prohibits the authority from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The authority may receive comment and set the matter for a later meeting. Please limit comments to 5 minutes. Do we have any?
No, we did not.
Thank you. Consent calendar items 2 and 3. All items listed on the consent calendar shall be considered routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussions of these items unless a board member of the authority requests specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Any item removed from the consent calendar will be considered after the regular business meeting. To approval of minutes for August 16th, 2022 annual meeting. Recommendation approved as submitted. Number 3, termination of lease agreement and transfer of property to the City of Taft. Recommendation, motion to adopt a resolution entitled, "A Resolution of the Taft Public Finance Authority Terminating Lease Agreement dated January 1st, 1997 between the Taft Public Financing Authority and the City of Taft, conveying to the city all right, title, and interest in the lease property." May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussions?
It's
No
consent.
discussion. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Shall we have a roll vote?
Director Noor,
Yes.
Director Bryant,
Yes.
Director Whiting,
Yes.
and Chairman Cryer.
Yes. Now we'll close the Taft Public Financing Authority. We're trying to make a motion.
That's all right. You can do that. Okay. We will reopen the Taft City Council Successor Agency Joint Regularly Scheduled Meeting. And that actually concludes our open session portion of this evening's meeting. We'll be going into closed session for 3 items. Item A is a conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9A, case number BCL-22-013308. Second, item B, conference with labor negotiator Craig Jones, City Manager, Government Code Section 54957.6, all units. Lastly, item C, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9A, Taft Union High School versus the City of Taft. Thank you all for being a part of this evening's meeting, and happy Halloween.